Wow, Ryu really is him. Still don't trust him though. Thank you to our $5 patrons, Strawbones, Weather4765, Midnight Gem Lord, Sean, and Artgoon. And a very big thank you to our $25 patron, Alex Ice Rose. Now, we're on this breakdown / discussion on chapter 351 of Black Clover. Please don't leave your on this one chapter in the comment section down below. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, hit that little notification to miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do have a Patreon down below. You can support as low as $1 exclusive videos, early content, and more. And you can also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks include the live reaction to this very chapter. Now, let's hop into the review. What's up, guys? Welcome here, and here we are to review chapter 351 of Black Clover, which is known as the Land of the Sun Shogun and Ellipses. And overall, this chapter was pretty darn neat. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into the chapter itself. So we open up and we do get to see that the dragon is indeed dragoning. Like, I give it credit. It's very determined, though I don't think it realized what it's up against. Because there's no way it's ever, with its big, laggy attacks, is going to catch Asta, the speedster, who's currently just casually flying around it. And I love how Asta is just so determined now, because obviously he just made that promise to Sister Lily, and this thing is now threatening the people. So this is the one, like, final major step before he goes and rematches with Daddy Lucius. So obviously he's so serious. And I love how you can see that with how Tabata draws him. He doesn't even have a mouth in this one panel. He just has narrowed eyes and focus. And he slides right underneath the dragon, and then instantly, like, it is bonkers, he casually slices through the whole thing. And I get it, you know, he's hitting it with Z10, and Z10 is a range extender and a power up, but even still, the fact that he's casually, when he's like legitimately as big as just one of the teeth of this dragon, and he's casually removing its heads, that's pretty bonkers. Like, it is actually kind of insane how physically powerful he is. Sure, he definitely has anti-magic, and that may be negating its durability just a little bit. But still, Brody is swinging so hard with Z10 that he's, like, dissecting these creatures. These creatures that are literally, like, hundreds, if not maybe not 1,000. I may be gassing with 1,000. But a creature that is at least, at bare minimum, 100 times bigger than him, he is casually decapitating. Bro is bonkers. He literally lands on one of them as it looks down on him and immediately leaps up and Z10s it straight through the dome, bruh. Like, imagine your own neck being used as a landing pad before the thing that used your neck as a landing pad puts you in two, divides you, does some mathematics on your dome piece. Like, what? Asta really going bonkers right now. However, of course, nothing in Asta's life can be easy and simple. So he looks back at the being he just bisected and realizes that, hey, wait a second. Its head is supposed to be off. Why isn't its head off? Like, I don't even... Can you imagine that? Like, you're going out of your way, you just mastered this big, bad, new technique, and you turn around to look at the thing you just used that big, bad, new technique on, and it's looking right back at you like, is that it? Is that really all we're doing here? That was light! Like that's kind of crazy how that happened. And he's kind of just looking at him like, dude, why'd you do that? That's the thing. It's hard to tell emotions with this gigantic draconic beast, but still, it looks more annoyed than really angry that it got its head torn off, which is crazy to think about. And Asta even notes flat out that it's healed itself, which is interesting, right? Because you would think that this healing is magical, because it literally has like flashing glowing lights on it, and anti-magic should negate that. But seemingly enough, anti-magic isn't able to stop its regeneration, which implies one thing, or really two things. Either A, Asta didn't put enough anti-magic into it, so it managed to overpower the anti-magic or something like that. B, the healing is natural, which is interesting. Like, I know lizards can heal their tails, and obviously this is way bigger than any lizard on the planet, but still, it's interesting that magic negation isn't working on this thing's healing to the point where it can casually pop right back on, probably in a matter of seconds. We gotta realize how fast Asta is likely moving here, and it's already healed. Like, the head, which got bisected, didn't even get to fall before it got healed up, which is crazy to think about. And we see that Asta, who can pretty casually cut through the dragon, like he literally says, even though I can cut it easily with anti-magic, it'll just keep on regenerating, which is crazy, right? Like this dragon was taking on the entire Ryuzen 7 minus like what, 3 of them? Because Yosuga, the one guy, and I think one of them is a healer. So 4, it was taking on 4 of the Ryuzen 7 all at the same time. Casually. Actually, no, it was 5. It was 5 of the Ryuzen 7 flat out. And still, it couldn't go down. Meanwhile, Asta himself is like, I can casually solo this thing easily without even using my full power, but it'll just keep regenerating. That's crazy. It goes to show you how strong Asta is. Like, even without true DU, which was admittedly something entirely different. True DU Asta is a monster and a beast, obviously. But even this Asta is so blatantly powerful that he's able to take on this thing that was body bagging the people that he trained him to this level, which is crazy to think about. However, we do get to see that Asta now has no clue what he's supposed to do, right? Because if anti-magic isn't stopping its regen, and he can't cut through it fast enough to make sure that it can't regen because it's so darn big, what is he really meant to do here? Even if he were to suddenly decapitate all of them, he would have to somehow get them in a straight line and have his attend big enough to decapitate all of them, which are 2 things that are very unlikely to happen. Like, hypothetically, this is kind of like the Hydra from Greek mythology, but instead of growing new heads or extra heads every single time a head is cut off, it just clicks right back on. Like it's like playing with Legos. There's nothing you can really do. The Legos will automatically reattach themselves, which is crazy. However, we don't spend too much time with Asta as we immediately cut over to Heath, I do believe, who is currently doing his best. The final remaining paladin at this point is currently doing his best to try and ice Yosuga. Like, legitimately, the ice spires are massive and diverse, and they're literally everywhere. Like, seriously, if this was anyone else other than, like, Yosuga tier characters, this would be a flat-out GG with how much ice is being thrown around right now. However, we see that in the midst of this icy chaos, this winter wonderland of sorts, we just see a person go, well, I'll be. That all you got? Your moves are flashy, but it's all there is to them. That is crazy. Like, I get it. Yosuga is the strongest of the Ryuzen 7, and the Ryuzen 7 have already proven themselves to be no joke at all. Like, they were out here having post-year of training Asta saying that even if he wasn't DU, he couldn't beat Ichika, which is crazy to think. And obviously, Asta seemingly surpassed her at this point, but still, the Ryuzen 7 is no joke. And they were getting body bagged by Heath. Meanwhile, Yosuga shows up and is like, I mean, it's alright. It looks neat. It's kind of flashy and fancy, but it really ain't all that. That just goes to show you how different Yosuga is in comparison to a lot of his competition. He's really living up to the title of the strongest of the Ryuzen 7. And we see that Heath still drinking the cleanest, purest, most wonderful variation of that good Kool-Aid is like, I cannot afford to lose for the sake of Lucius, Daddy Lucius's righteous world. I'm like, dude, I really wonder about him. Like, was he always just working for Lucius? Was it always that? Because I know after Asta beat him, he mentioned the fact that his real master was something else. His real master really was something different. But I wonder if always working for Lucius was the real endgame plan. And if, like, even if you were to remove the paladin influence from him, which we know has impacts on your mind, if he would actually work for Daddy Lucius still. Like, even if he were to go back, he would go back to Daddy Lucius after being freed and be like, hey, Father, please put more meat in me or something. I need help. But legitimately, like, he would go back and wish or ask for help again because he's that loyal to Lucius. I really wonder. Because he's the only one left. He's the only paladin that was sent to the Land of the Sun who's still alive, who's still around. Well, not alive. I don't think they slaughtered any of them. But is still, like, actively a paladin. Like, I'm not sure how much control Lucius has over them. Or, like, if he can hypothetically see through their eyes or something like that. But Lucius should, like, send reinforcements or something. He only has one left. And sure, the dragon's still a big threat. It's still running around, going crazy, going bonkers. But still, all Heath needs is one quick anti-magic's attend to the chest from Asta. Like, it can literally just be off guard. Asta flies away from the dragon for a hot second. Quickly, Zaten one slashes him, and then the Land of the Sun is pretty much fine, because the dragon's going to get jumped. So, very, very interesting. And I wonder how Lucius is going to react to failure. Like, I'm not sure, at least from the vibes I'm getting from Lucius up to this point, he doesn't seem like a guy who would tolerate failure. Like, hypothetically, he seems more like a person who I forget, what's the villain I'm thinking of? I thought about Aizen, but I'm thinking of a very specific villain that, when given power... Then again, no, I'm thinking of Moro from the Dragon Ball Super manga, but even then, he's different. I feel like Lucius is the kind of guy who, if you came back and was like, my lord, I just need more strength, I need more power. I'm sorry, I failed the first time, but I will not fail you again, please. Father, Daddy, Lucius, please. Lucius would be like, so you failed? Yes, my lord, but I can fix it. I can do better. I just need more of your girth inside me. Lucius would be like, 1, pause. 2, rewind the tape. And 3, you're being deleted for your failure. Like, legitimately, I don't see Lucius being the kind of guy who tolerates something like that. Like, the way he's treating his own flesh and blood siblings, to the point where he's literally just going to absorb their magic and leave them as magicless husks so he can just become the mightiest. I highly doubt he would really care for his subordinates. I think if his subordinates came back with failure, he would be like, it's just the luck of the draw, my friend. It's time for you to go. And boom, they're gone. At least that's what I would think, based on what I can tell from Daddy Lucius so far. We haven't gotten too much of him, surprisingly enough. We are on chapter 351, and he was introduced in chapter 331, I'm pretty sure. So we've only had about 20 chapters of him, and even then, it's not like all 20 of these chapters have been surrounding Daddy Lucius. So I'm very interested to see how he would react to any of his subordinates coming back to him. I hope we get at least one example of that. And I think if any example of it would exist, it would be this Heath guy. And we see that with he's making the statement like, hey, yo, for the sake of this righteous world Daddy's making, I can't let you live. I can't let you survive at all. We see that Yosuga is like, really? A righteous world? Ha! Well, from your point of view, it only makes sense that you think you're in the right. But for me, I'm different. And to be fair, he has proven himself to be very different indeed. And we get to see that the real reason he says he's different is because of the person he's chosen to follow. Heath has committed himself entirely to Daddy Lucius. Meanwhile, we saw Yosuga's here to cut him down for the sake of their shogun. Meaning that this is realistically not just a battle between two warriors, but it's also a battle of ideologies. Whose leader is better, and why, and what do those leaders stand for, and what do they do? And I like that. It's a very interesting twist upon the battle. Technically, it was kind of implied, because, the paladins were doing nothing but slopping off Lucius, like, every single second they get. Like, every other word out their mouth was Daddy and or Lucius. So it makes sense that they were slopping him off, but I never necessarily considered it that way until Yosuga brought it up, that this really is a battle to see whose leader is more efficient. And at first, it seems like Lucius was winning, but we see the progress done by Asta and now Yosuga to prove that Ryu's way is right. And I like that. It's a nice extra layer to add on top of the already many layers of the fight. However, of course, the battle between these two isn't necessarily the main point why we're here, because we know Yosuga is going to slam. The real reason we're doing this is so we can get a flashback to Yosuga and Ryu in their respective younger years. And we see that Yosuga explains, I was there to become the leader of Koshu. I was the strongest from a very young age. There wasn't anyone across the land who stood a chance against me. The only person who could fight around with me on equal terms was Ryu, heir to the neighboring island of Goshu. Interesting. So, first things first, Ryu was not like Asta. I'm not sure if this was already confirmed before, but Ryu was not just born with the Tengetsu, the all-seeing eye, and had no magic. No, Ryu did in fact have magic, and he had seemingly strong enough magic that he was able to contest the strongest. And I like, the dragon and tiger face-off with Yosuga and Ryu, because, they're constantly pitted against each other. I don't think a dragon and a tiger is a fair fight. Unless the dragon's like really, really small. I never necessarily got that comparison, but they're constantly pitted against each other. So it's nice that Ryu, the leader, the one who ended up being more mighty, is the one with the dragon. Meanwhile, the tiger is still a very formidable opponent, and one that is and earned the respect of the dragon, but still is its lesser. And it's interesting to see that Ryu had fire magic. I wonder if he had any dragon specific magic just in comparison, because he has the dragon behind him. But at least he had fire magic, which puts him up there. There aren't really many fire magic users now that I think about it. I think it's just Magne. That's not Magne. Magna. I think that's it. That's the only other fire user, but I'm blanking. Who knows? There are probably like 15 other fire users that I'm forgetting. However, I'm pretty sure Ryu was probably the mightiest of them all if he was fighting with Yosuga at such a young age. And I'm assuming Ryu is the one who gave Yosuga his scar. Because if Yosuga really was the strongest unparalleled except for Ryu, it only makes sense that Ryu would give him his scar. And considering Ryu doesn't have any scars, I actually think he was the stronger of the two. Yosuga hypes himself up as the mightiest, and Ryu is only his rival, but I don't know. One of y'all probably did permanent damage to each other, and it clearly isn't Ryu. Ryu doesn't have any permanent damage on him. So, I don't know, Yosuga. Were you really the mightiest? Or are you just gassing yourself up? Let me know, buddy. Let me know. However, we do get to see that the two had a pretty intense but friendly rivalry, right? Every time they'd cross swords, it was just to see who was more fit to be the shogun. Just to see who was stronger, whose Yoryoku was greater at the time. And, it's good to have that. I say it's always good for people to have rivals in something that they do, like whether it be in content creation, whether it be in games, whether it be in skills. I think it's good to have someone who you can directly compare yourself to. I have homies that like fit in all those spheres. I have one homie who's my one-to-one. Like if I'm going for an intense, even and fair set of Smash Bros, I go to that homie. If I want a really good set of fighters, I go to one homie. If I want a really good chess match, I go to one homie. If I want to play Yu-Gi-Oh, I go to one. It's good to have people who are equal to you because it allows you to sharpen your skills. You don't want to be blown out of the water. Like, it's, ironically enough, it's that perfect state of flow, to bring Blue Lock into it for a little bit, because I'm going to start bringing Blue Lock into everything. It's that perfect state of balance where you have an opponent that rivals you, so you aren't getting blown out of the water, and thusly you don't necessarily care about it because you know you're going to lose. And it's not so easy that you're just body bagging your opponent. It's that nice, beautiful balance where it's challenge-centered focus, where you're in the moment, you're fully absorbed, and you're using everything to your ability. I think those are the most fun anything, really, like matches, intensities. Those are some of the times where you do the deepest bonding, because you may say some blasphemous stuff. I remember back when Smash 4 was around and me and my one homie used to play like every weekend. It was literally just like consistently we would show up at each other's houses and just grind and see who was better. He was a Mario player, I was a Sonic player. It was some of the most intense things ever, but it was so much fun despite the downright diabolical, dastardly things we say to each other in the heat of the moment. Right afterwards, it would always be cool, which is so much fun. However, we do get to see that their competitions to be the Shogun were not just going to be based on strength, they were going to be based on character and will, because something bad happened. Well, something bad is kind of an understatement. An epidemic took place. It spread throughout Koshu and Goshu. Those who were weak, with weak Yoryoku, were dying in droves. And that's pretty rough. Kind of crazy, in fact. Like, I wonder what caused it. Notably, we know that things like anti-magic are very unhealthy for those who have magic. So I wonder if this is like an anti-magic test or something. Like, it seems so oddly specific. Specifically, those with low amounts or weak Yoryoku were the ones who were dying. Meaning that anyone who was high level was just fine. Like Yosuga and like Ryu. But if that's the case, what kind of disease, and notably, diseases can just happen. They can literally just appear out of nowhere. They mutate the wrong way, and then they take on certain properties. And obviously, in a magically based world, it's not too surprising that there are magical sicknesses. Presumably, viruses and sicknesses within the world of Black Clover would have to adapt to super powerful magical creatures anyway. So it makes sense that, maybe there's just a sickness that happens to target people with magic, and the weaker your magic is, the harder it is for you to fight the sickness, and that's why they were perishing a lot. But still, it seems so similar to anti-magic, and even the coloration that Tabata uses for showing like which lands were affected seems almost anti-magic-ish, but I may just be stretching it. It may just be, people get sick. It happened to target weak people because weak people didn't have that much Yoryoku. Bada bing, bada boom. It may just be that. I may just be overthinking it, but you can never trust the bot anymore. Bro can pull a twist out of nowhere. However, we do get to see that the people of Koshu and Goshu, very specifically only those two islands, not the other ones, were basically on the precipice of being annihilated. Like, if this sickness were to keep going at the rate it was going, there's no way people would have been able to survive, because weak Yoryoku is probably more common than strong Yoryoku. Like, as Yosuga himself says, he was pretty much the pinnacle outside of Ryu. So most people who weren't of royal blood were probably just gonna, which is bad, obviously, for the economy and for the people there. And we see that the only hypothetical way that they could stop this plague is something called the living soul herb. But the thing about the living soul herb is that it's just like the dragon. It was a myth. It was a legend. It's pretty much gone extinct. There's no way that they'll be able to find a herb that will magically fix everything, especially one from folklore, no less. So it seems like it's just a fat, old, hefty GG. Because even if they did have a way to, quote unquote, look for this herb that exists perfectly to solve this one very specific problem, they'd have no way to find it. However, the thing is, we do get to see that apparently within the land of the rising sun, there is a power, a special ability known as the Tengetsu. And it's an all-seeing eye. Notably eye singular, not all-seeing eyes. Once again, this does kind of remind me of Norse mythology, where Odin had to sacrifice, or to get an all-seeing eye, he gave up an eye. So, I wonder. However, the reason not everyone's running around with Tengetsu and the reason it's so hard and dangerous to achieve is because not only is it like Yorioku based, like you need to have a hefty amount of Yorioku to get it. You can't just be Joe Schmo on the street with like 2 points of Yorioku in your stat build and then suddenly get the Tengetsu and see everything in the world. No, you need to have a high amount of Yorioku, which would probably only be likely for royals or people raised in that background. And on top of that, you don't just need enough Yorioku to gain it, which the only two people who were able to gain it at the time that they needed it was Yosuga and Ryu. You also need to give up all your Yorioku. That's the price to pay for obtaining the Tengetsu, losing every last drop of your Yorioku. And that's pretty bonkers. This does make sense. Don't get me wrong, I thought, hypothetically, maybe Ryu was just born with it. Like, he was destined to be Shogun. Like, the idea that the Shogun is someone who gets, like, elected from one of the different islands, rather than being one who is, like, born into the bloodline is very interesting to me. I like that concept and that twist on it. But I thought Ryu just came from the Shogun family line and had this ability as one of the Shogun family line. But no, this is an ability that was inorganically given to him at the cost of all Yorioku. And we see Yosuga realizing, like, wait, like, what? No way, dog. Sure, an all-seeing eye is great and all, but there's only so much one can see. There's no point in having that kind of power when you don't even have any real power to use in expressing it. The one thing that I am, the one thing that I think I could hypothetically lose was my strongest title. And if I give up my Yorioku, how can I be the strongest? And that's actually a really good thing. We see that Yosuga actually critiques himself for this in the modern day. He's like, I would have rather let the weak perish than risk losing my Yorioku for something that might not exist. And to be fair, I can't even blame Yosuga, right? Because you gotta think, his Yorioku, his title, all that he did was specifically built up for his entire life. That was probably his main goal. Being the strongest, being the mightiest, being top dog. That was all him. That was his entire personality, his way of life. He spent probably years training his strength. He can't just give that up. That's like you live to 25 doing one thing, and then someone comes along and says, hey, you know, we need your help to get this thing that may not even be real. And if you do that, to do that, you have to never do the one thing you've been doing for your entire life ever again. Period, point blank. Like that, for most people, would be scary, even if, like, it was for an altruistic reason, like saving a whole bunch of people. Most individuals wouldn't give up something. Like, this is more than a passion. This was literally Yosuga's life that he was sacrificing, especially in a world that values Yorioku so much, that values magic so much, like the Black Clover world. Willingly giving that up to most people before it happens essentially sounds like a death sentence. Because how are you going to live in a world of magic without magic? Sure, you have this one alternative ability, but sight doesn't matter when you're going to get attacked by bandits who could one-shot you because they have magic and you don't now. You may have been some top dog hotshot noble or some top tier level warrior, but once you lose all your Yorioku, what are you? Not that. Because that's your main way of fighting. The world is so focused on magic that despite I can kind of understand Yosuga getting mad at himself for not wanting to do it, at the same time, I completely understand why a young man wouldn't want to sacrifice the rest of his life. Because I know it sounds dramatic, but essentially giving up magic in the Black Clover world when you were born with it, and Asta never had a choice, but when you are born with it is literally like giving up a limb. It's not like giving up an organ. Like, you have 2 kidneys. You can give one away and live just fine as long as you eat healthy. You can give away a piece of your liver. It will grow back, and or you can function without it. You even have 2 lungs. I'm pretty sure you can spare a lung to people. But essentially giving away your Yorioku in this case is the equivalent of giving away a limb, an arm, a leg. I want to say a hand, but no, I think it literally is like limb level. Your life changes permanently if you give up your magic. There's just no doubt about that. It just says your life changes permanently giving up a limb. You never notice how heavily you rely on certain things until they're gone. But even just imagine you yourself were told, hey, we need you to sacrifice your arm for something that may not even work. Would you do it? I wouldn't. Like, just straight up, I was thinking about it. I don't think I would. It sounds tough, sounds rough, but I like my arms. I like my legs. I like being able to walk. I like being able to hold things within my hands. I like having hands. So giving those up for people, I don't know. Maybe that's selfish. Maybe if I was in the actual situation, my answer would be different. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how altruistic I am. But especially for uncertainty, I can't even blame Yosuga for his thought process here, because that's a really hard choice to make. However, Ryu, being the perfect, amazing, happy, cool, greatest guy on the planet ever, is like, got it. No problem. If that's all you want, then go ahead. Take my Yorioku. Crazy. Like, I'm not exactly sure. I'm still very, very iffy on trusting Ryu entirely. I know there's no reason to. I know the only thing that seemed remotely villainous is his weird just appearance and timeline-wise within the narrative. But still, in my heart of hearts, I just don't trust Ryu. It's like my bones are shaking and quaking, like, don't do it. Do not give in to this guy. So, who knows? Who knows? I got the same feeling around Julius, ironically enough, when I first read Black Clover. So, who knows? Maybe my intuition is right. But even then, Julius isn't a bad guy. It's Lucius. So, maybe I'm just a little bit too cautious around Ryu for no reason at all. But it's crazy to me that he's willing to sacrifice his Yorioku. Something he also presumably spent a majority of his life training for. Just like that. Like, no questions asked. He's willing to sacrifice it for a power that may end up being useless. I'm not sure. It doesn't seem like anyone else has Tengetsu. There's accounts of it, obviously. They're able to give it to people. But even still, that takes a level of self-sacrifice and determination that I do have to respect. Giving away your main way of defending yourself and attacking and proving your worth for a chance at saving people. Not a guarantee, but a chance. And we see that Ryu even asks, even though he's the one doing the extremely shocking thing, he's like, hey, are you okay with that, Yosuga? And we see Yosuga's like, yeah, dude. Sure. Sacrifice your Yorioku, I guess. Bro's gotta be dumb. Like, he literally asks, losing his Yorioku? Is he mental or something? Just what is he thinking? Like, and I don't blame him. Obviously, you could definitely, like, chalk this up to Reed being like, well, if I get this and I save the people, then I will automatically be appointed to Shogun because I save so many more people than I could with my magic. But I don't know. This seems a little bit too pure and altruistic, which makes me wonder. I don't blame Yosuga for believing that Ryu's a little bit mental right now, because just willingly sacrificing that on the spot, on the dime, the second it's mentioned to you, is pretty darn bonkers. No lie. And we see that Ryu, considering he associated the Shogun with strength, with power, and considering this is a magical world, magical strength and magical power is super important. He just believes that Ryu is essentially forfeiting his chance in running for Shogun. Like, it's just done. By giving up his magic, he thinks that's just a GG. And we see that Ryu was lucky enough to get the Tengetsu just fine, and indeed also find the living soul herb, and then he saved the people. And we see that at the time, in his youth, Yosuga was pretty stubbornly angry with Ryu. Selfishly so. Because he lost his only rival. His favorite opponent. The one person in all the lands who could equal him. And I kind of don't blame him for that. It reminds me a lot of Mihawk from One Piece, where once Shanks lost his arm, another thing that is so important, he's like, dude, I'm not going to fight a one-armed man, you're fodder now. And not fodder, Shanks is obviously still an extremely strong character in One Piece, but 2 arms is better than 1. You can swing a sword a whole lot better with 2 arms than you can with 1. You can wield 2 swords with 2 hands and not 2 swords in 1 hand. So I don't even blame Yosuga. He's looking at someone who, for his entire life, was the only person who could really challenge him. And now he's gone. Like, in the blink of an eye, quite literally, he lost the eye. Now, Yosuga is just alone at the pinnacle. And I've always talked about this. Being number 1, as cool as it can be, is kind of sad. You're lonely up there. They say 1 is the loneliest number for a reason. Bro now has nobody to challenge him. No one to go up against. All he has is himself now. He just has to keep training endlessly, knowing that he'll never probably find a worthy opponent. And that's kind of sad. That's kind of sad. And of course, it's not just in a fighting sense, being number 1 in anything. Only thing you can lose when you're number 1 is your first place spot. You can't lose any friends. You can't lose any power. Well, you can lose friends. You can't lose power. But essentially, being number 1 is not all it's cracked up to be. Sure, it's cool. It's great. It's definitely awesome. I'd love to be the fastest man alive, the strongest man alive, the toughest man alive, the smartest man alive. But still, I can't imagine that it's too healthy on the mental, considering humans are social creatures, and if you're the best at what you do, then the rest kind of seems lacking. However, with that being the case, while Yosuga is sad and bitter that he lost his only rival and now he became the hero of the land, Ryu didn't change at all. Like, the only thing is he stopped shaving, because Ryu went on and kept saving people over and over again using the Tengetsu, using the all-seeing eye. And that does make me wonder, is the Tengetsu the one revealed eye, or is it the one that's covered by the sword hilt? I don't know. It's interesting. However, we see that due to his consistent saving of people, due to his constant greatness, as it were, people flocked to him. They surrounded him. They were naturally drawn to him because he helped so many people and he was such a good guy. And realistically, a whole bunch of people just started following Ryu out of their own free will because Ryu was just a nice dude. And I don't know, once again, it sounds so nice, so convenient, so true, so good, so pure that I just don't want to trust it. But at the same time, it's nice to see he rallied a whole bunch of people behind him. Presumably, he either saved and or helped all of the Ryus in 7 in one way, shape, or form. We obviously see what he did for Ichika, hiding her trauma from her for literally years upon years upon years. So I can't imagine what he did for the rest of the Ryus in 7. And he was obviously Yosuga's rival, so even an impact on him too. So obviously, Ryu's definitely the MC of his own story, like you can tell. So I'm very intrigued to see more of him. And we see that once it came time to determine the next shogun, presumably after the previous one had perished, as impressive as Ryu's accomplishments and popularity were, without any Yorioku, without any power, he wasn't necessarily considered top dog. Especially for a position of shogun. Assumedly, the shogun is the defender of the land in one way, shape, or form. They'll be the one who steps forward in case an invading force ever appears. But with that being the case, having no Yorioku at all, he can't really do that. At least not in the conventional way that most people would be able to assess and measure. Sure, Ryu may still be extremely physically strong. We saw that when he popped in between Ichika and Asta and casually no-sold both of their attacks with his bare arms. But in comparison, we've seen in the Black Clover world, physical strength is valued way, way lower than magical strength. And having no magic at all, well, you basically have no value, at least in a world that's so focused on magic. However, we do get to see that Yosuga, after growing older and maturing, when it's said that he's the most respectable and likable choice for Shogun based on his magical strength, he disagrees. He says, Ryu, you're the Shogun. As for me, I'll become the 7th Ryuzen. So Yosuga, after growing older and seeing Ryu succeed as much as he did at saving people and being a good leader and a person who can draw the attention, really, pencil? The attention and respect of others so naturally, he acknowledged him too. He was willing to put his faith in Ryu just like everybody else did. And I think that's really, really nice. It's good to see that Yosuga didn't end up bitter. He didn't end up losing in any way, shape, or form. In fact, he gave up the position he spent his entire life working for to be a lesser position than his friend just because he could tell how good his friend would be as a leader. Just because he respected his friend that much. And I really, really like that. It's really, really solid character writing. I greatly appreciate what Tabata did with Yosuga's writing. Already, like, up there with Ichigo is my favorite Ryuzen. Once again, we haven't gotten much of the other Ryuzen, but still, Really, really good. And we see, back to present day, Heath is wondering, why he hasn't gone down after this many attacks. And we see that the reason the ice isn't working is because Yosuga's Yojutsu is Iron Yojutsu, Iron Soldier. And I really, really like it. It's a really cool design. It makes him look a whole lot buffer. So I wonder if this is like almost like what the Earth guy had, except on a way smaller scale. And obviously, iron is typically more durable than just regular flat out Earth. So we see that the ice just shatters against him. And I gotta say, Tabata on the art front, not as good as Horikoshi. I don't know. It's really between Suzuki Sensei and Tabata is kind of rough. I think, once again, in a similar vein to what I say about Suzuki Sensei versus Horikoshi, I think Suzuki Sensei's Sakamoto days, if you're wondering. I'm not talking about Nakaba here, though I think Nakaba's art is also really, really good. But Suzuki Sensei, when it comes to fluidity, I think he has over Tabata in terms of just manga art. But in terms of coloring, I gotta say Tabata blows all of his competition out of the water. Like, specifically for usage of black and white, the way that he draws the iron armor here, the Iron Soldier, is so good. I love the different levels of shading, the light reflecting off different parts of his body, obviously the different darks, the different light. It's so good. I love how he drew it. And of course, we do get to see that with Yosuga being the mightiest of the Ryuzen, the mightiest there is, he casually attends Heath and is like, hey, my fault, brody. Tough luck, pal. I'm the strongest there is. I love the way that armor looks, or the way the magic looks. And we see that due to the fighting of the strongest of the Ryuzen and Asta, the other Ryuzen rise up and are like, nah, we can't do this, we can't stand by, we must keep on fighting. And we see the man of the hour himself, Ryu, calls from the top of the castle, hey yo, my peoples, even if no one else knows, I've watched over y'all this whole time, your fights, your thoughts, your efforts, there ain't no way y'all will be defeated here, so let's take down the five-headed dragon. Ryu's inspiring them to the point where they all get up, excited as always, ready to fight, declaring, yes, sir. And we see that Yosuga acknowledges that Asta is reaching for that same position, reaching for the same heights. And thus, it's the Ryuzen's job to make it so that Asta can reach there. He can reach those heights, and he can become someone as good, as inspiring, and as powerful as Ryu, despite not having any magic at all. I think that's really, really nice. I love the story of this chapter. I love the character work it does for Yosuga. I love how it further establishes Ryu as an amazing person. Obviously, seeing Asta fight the dragon's really, really cool. Heath was much more like a centerpiece or like a action set piece rather than a character. But I think for all the great work this character does for Yosuga, really, really good. A 2-week break was definitely justified for something like this. The art was amazing. The character writing was amazing. The storytelling is amazing. Super excited for next chapter. But that's what I think. Please let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. It makes it a little notification to miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, you do have a Patreon down below. Use more as low as $1 down month. Links to videos, early content, and more. You also now become a member of the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Now, thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is Dagger the Pencil, writing off.